I had to agree. Like, despite it being a long film, it didn't necessarily feel that way, or that there was any superfluous content in there. It was just one excellent scene to the next, and it never felt like it was dragging in any way. So, yeah, it's a significant feat to have a film that's almost 3 hours feel that continuously entertaining.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think Hollywood has a lot to learn from the quality of movies coming out at the moment. Like I said, I've only seen 2 and then the wrong one, but it was still good. But the quality was excellent. Like it's like I said, it's refreshing. It is really refreshing to see, and I feel like I've missed out on something for quite a long time.
Don't worry, man. There's nothing like missing out. You can rewatch all of them on this podcast. So. But basically, no, man. The thing is, what I took away as well from the first half is like, you're right. It didn't feel like it was dragging at all because it was just so engaging. Like, and that's because of the elements you guys are talking about. Like, the script is written well enough that there's enough mystery for you to keep following along. Action is good, like that. Hello and welcome back to another episode of D54. Today we are reviewing the 2022 blockbuster action phenomenon, Vikram. I'm Amit and I'm joined by Dennis.
Evening, how are we?
And I'm joined by Sunny.
Hey everyone, good to be here.
Guys, I hope you guys are prepared for this one because we just watched this crazy, epic, action-packed blockbuster, man. Ooh, I don't know what you guys felt, but this is one to remember. But bit of background, Vikram, Tamil movie. So, this is our third Indian movie now. So we've traveled from, we did a Telugu movie, a Malayalam movie, now we're doing a Tamil movie. So we've covered a lot of South India so far. But this one of the most remarkable things, guys, is this one is featuring one of the most iconic, biggest stars ever to do it. Sonny, you asked before if there's a comparison with this guy. There's no comparison. Kamal Hassan. This guy started acting in... Okay, try and guess the decade which he started.
Wait, how old is he?
Without looking at IMDb, unless you've checked that already.
No, I haven't.
Wait, how old is he?
Just try and guess, man. He's pretty
old.
You saw him in the movie.
he's not sprightly. Well, he is sprightly, but in real life.
I'd say he's a sprightly early 60s.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
So then I'm saying 70s then. Wait, no, that's when if you're straight up born. No, I don't know.
His first role, 1960.
Wow.
1960.
Yeah, been around for a while.
The dude's been acting for 60 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah, so his earlier movies are in black and white, to give you some context.
Wow.
So, he doesn't act as much anymore. In fact, this is sort of a comeback for him. Sort of like he's taken smaller roles, but a role like this, where he's sort of the head guy, is not that common. But look, he was a huge deal. Like, as big as it gets, there are a few Indian actors that are at that level. He's one of them, one of the few that have done it for that long. But yeah, it's pretty incredible, man. So, to get things started, what did you guys sort of think about Kamal Hassan, about the rest of the cast and stuff like that? Just, the intro scene has us intro with him dying, but like just in terms of seeing this old guy kick it around, like, was that something refreshing or something new? Was something you guys expecting?
Sonny, I'll let you go first on this because
sure.
This is I'm only new to the scene as well, and there's a lot of cultural stuff that I'm not like familiar with, but I am very keen to talk about my first impressions of this movie. So I'm happy for you to jump in early, mate.
All right. Well, I thought he was really awesome in this film, like as believable as a guy in his 60s could be being an action superstar. I thought he did an excellent job. I thought the best parts of this film were really in that first half where he wasn't really around, but he had this presence about him every time he was on screen, right? And obviously he just carries a lot of gravity every time he's on screen, and just kind of everything he does carries a certain weight to it. And you get the feeling that this is a guy who's just at the top of his game in terms of his acting chops, and he knows how to do this. He's been an action superstar for decades by the sounds of it, and the full weight of that is like completely, like, you appreciate that on the screen. I thought his character was believable, you know, the anguish of losing his son, looking after his grandson, wanting to create a better world for his grandson by having the somewhat ambitious goal of eliminating the drug trade in India. It's a bold call, but respect. Look, I loved him. I thought he had a great presence. He had an excellent theme song every time he was doing something epic, which just added to, I think, the presence that he felt. And the music, again, was a great part of this piece and really added to the gravity that he carried. So yeah, look, I thought he was really good in this film. And I can only imagine audiences must have lost their mind every time he was on the screen doing something epic.
Yep, there's definitely an element of that. No, you bring up a great point, man. Like, just as he has as much presence off the screen as he does when he's on it. I don't know if you noticed that. Like, that's a great point. Like, I also enjoyed the first half quite a bit. But Dennis, what did you sort of think of
Yep. So before I jump in with this, can I just say, look, you guys did a great cast on RRR, which I think is still one of our highest viewed sort of videos on our channel, which is amazing. And then I watched, but missed out, having a chat about, was it Jana Gana Mana?
Yep.
So that was a really great movie too. And there's a lot there that I didn't quite have a deep understanding of in terms of the cultural aspects and the language aspects. I think when you and I spoke, Amit, I was just amazed at how, there was a drop into English and then back into Indian. And then you're like, well, no, actually there's 5 different dialects being spoken in that movie aside from English or something like that. And I was like, wow, yeah, I didn't get that. So I came into this movie and I was excited because I didn't actually see the RRR that you guys watched. I actually watched something completely different that I thought was that movie, which was absolutely off the wall, but really enjoyed it too. And what I'm finding is that I'm actually really, really enjoying these movies. Like well above and beyond. I think I'm so Hollywood blockbuster fatigued that these movies are like literally a bottle of water to a man dying in the desert, like effectively for content. Like this stuff is just brilliant. So, there's and forgive me because there's a lot of cultural things that I don't know what is the right and wrong thing to say. So, pull me if I'm saying something that I shouldn't. But there's a you see a lot of like Bollywood previews, and there's lots of dancing and like crazy special effects and all that kind of stuff. So, I come in with a bit of expectation that things are going to be a little bit crazy, right? And so the first opening scene of this, aside from the guy, is this dude in a train yard dancing in his like in his sunnies in his shirt with like 100 other people. I'm like, okay, is this normal for this type of movie to have at least one dance in it? Does it have to have just one dance in it to qualify it as a movie? But you know what? I bloody loved it, and I really did bloody love it. It was a great intro. Like I've never seen, or I may have seen a movie with this man in it, but I obviously didn't recognize when I watched it. To me, it was all new. The actors were new. Everything was new. Even the environments were new. So the dance kickoff for me, I was like, yeah, this is fabulous. Like this is really amazing. But then when it got into the bit where he was driving and, he was drunk and there was oncoming traffic and he had the accident. I've seen that kind of opening set before. A lot of anime that I've watched has a kind of a set up like that. and it begins. And knowing the basic premise of the movie, it already sort of triggered my brain that there's going to be certain pathways that this is going to go. There was the Black Ops team, and then there was the masked bandits and all that kind of stuff. As you can sort of easily discern from the description in Google and stuff like that. And then sort of seeing him captured and then tied up, and it was gritty, and then those guys, and then all of a sudden it was like we went from dancing to brutal.
Yeah.
Graphically violent, brutal.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like what the waiting for here? This is awesome, right? Sorry for my language, but this is it. But it was really pulling my mind left and right with this guy in the center. Now I don't care. This man could talk to me for the rest of my life, and I would never get sick of his voice, even if I didn't understand a word he was damn saying. This man could talk to me. He could say whatever he'd like to be, and I could listen to this man talk forever. Such a beautiful, rich, sonorous voice, and I can hear him rolling his R's, even though I can't understand again what he's saying. He's, and I'm not quite sure. Sometimes the subtitles were a bit sort of out of sync, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was matching up okay. But for the most part, I thought that opening sequence with him the dance especially was fantastic, and it just blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. But the sheer juxtaposition between that and then having him captured and what happens to him. I've got some thoughts on that opening scene, Amit, which I'm happy to wait until later on to talk about. But overall, I love this guy. I think he's great. And I know that there's a couple of other movies that he's in that sort of closes the gap of the universe. Like there's another couple of movies that they're in the same universe as this. And I'll be watching them. Like I think I'll be heading out to sort of find out what more about this guy, more about this universe, trying to figure it out, because it's brilliant.
It's interesting, man. Like I didn't know about this either because I haven't seen the other movie, but it's directed by Lokesh Kanagaraj. I hope I'm saying that right. But essentially, this guy has another movie where I think the Black Ops guy who gets caught is the lead actor in that movie. So it ties into that universe. And I think at the very end scene, so I didn't understand what was happening at the very end with the new introduction of that guy. Rolex, I think they called him, but he's actually also a huge star in South Indian cinema as well. So, big name that's going to continue the saga forward, I think. So they're building something pretty unique here. I haven't seen this kind of universe tied together. I guess it's kind of tied together maybe like the Fast and Furious or like the Expendables kind of thing. Maybe they're trying to do something like that. Like it's not like the multiverse, how Marvel are doing it, but it's some kind of universe. But now I think that's a good segue, Dennis, into sort of the first half and stuff like that, because I think for me this was definitely a tale of two halves, and there were sort of two different stories. The first half I think was more around thriller, mystery, because while we think that Kamal Hassan, Vikram is actually passed away, I think it's clear he's not. They're not going to kill off a character like that at the start. So we sort of know that he's around because we can just tell by the movie. But I like how the movie plays on the murder mystery aspect, and they go through the clues. Good performances aside from Hassan as well. Like I liked the cop, the main guy that was there as well, Amar, Detective Amar. He was pretty good. And basically everyone just around them, like the squad they build and everything like that, the storytelling they do to, find out the story behind this guy. And it's cool, right? Like they're telling the story about this guy. I like the way they do it. Like, he's going to different parts, reenacting him, where he would be, sometimes in his shoes, sometimes he sees him there. So, yeah, man, Tony, I'll chuck it to you first, man. What did you sort of, because you did mention you liked the sort of first half more, and I think I'm in the same boat as you, but what were sort of the things you liked about it, or did you like the pacing and the acting? What was sort of the stuff that you liked?
I thought it was just a really interesting kind of unraveling of the story, like a police procedural, essentially, right? Because you had this random death of this Karanan character who turns out to be Vikram, and he's seemingly unconnected to these other deaths that are happening of police figures and the like. And so this Amar character is essentially retracing his steps, talking to the people that Vikram had been talking to. There's this great scene where he goes to the golf course that Vikram has gone to, and there's this brilliant juxtaposition of he's sitting there, and then it's got Kamal Hassan sitting there as well, and it's almost like they're looking at one another, and it's this really wonderfully done like juxtaposition. He goes to that brothel and talks to that lady about, and he's just hanging out outside the window wondering what is Vikram doing here for like 1 hour to pass the time. I thought it was just, really beautiful, like world building as well. But the murder mystery part of Amar trying to figure out this Vikram character was really well done, I thought. I thought that was definitely the best parts of this movie were not always the action parts. It was just that figuring out about the Vikram character. The first half also is really dense with a whole lot of information. I mean, I have to admit, it's a fairly complex film at times. Part of it could be that I was following the subtitles, and so I was missing the visuals, and so, I was a step behind. It really took me kind of maybe half or 2/3 of the film to piece it all together in terms of how the characters related to one another, what was the broader plot, and like what was really going on here. You guys might have figured it out a bit sooner, but I felt like it was a fairly complex plot and not a straightforward action film, right? Which I really appreciated. There was like genuine world building that is obviously leading up to a sequel that will be equally epic as well. But I really appreciated kind of the slow procedural elements of the first half of this film.
Yeah, no, definitely. One thing I mentioned before I pass it to you, Dennis, is just, and I think I want to get your take on this as well, man. But it's got a cool look to it, right? Like it's pretty different. I thought it was you mentioned the word gritty before. It is like that gritty, slimy, like, crime kind of element that you feels like you're in this world of like mess and corruption and dirt. Like it feels
like you're
that.
On the streets following these characters, right? There's these intimate scenes like where Amar is like talking to another guy in the taxi or something, and then he kicks him into the window with his foot, and it's all like very claustrophobic in there, right? You really feel the tension and the like grittiness of it.
Yeah, and they have the bad guy. I think it's Satanam, played by Vijay Setupalli. We're sorry, we're going to butcher these names. Sorry, but look, man, they introduced some pretty interesting characters as well. You're right. The information is dense at the start. Like we're getting a lot of introduction to characters. This dude has 3 wives and a big family. Like that itself was. Some of this stuff was just insane. Like, yeah, you're right. The scene where he's talking to the guy in the car and he just puts his foot to his mouth and just squashes it. I was like, shit, it had some pretty interesting scenes. But yeah, Dennis, what did you sort of think of the first half and how the plot unraveled and everything, man? What were your thoughts?
Oh, mate, yeah. So I'll try and keep this succinct because there's a lot to unpack with that first half. So the key things for me that really came out of it was it took me a little bit to understand that it was like old dogs versus young dogs, right? It was the same team, but they brought in the newer version of that Black Ops team to track down the older version of that Black Ops team. And it took me a little bit to figure that out. But once I understood that, when he was tracing the movements and the steps and putting himself in the way you guys phrased it was really beautiful, like in the shoes of Vikram and trying to figure out what he's doing. I mean, I'd hire this dude as a UX researcher. I think it'd be great. All of a sudden I realized that there won't be anything in this movie that's going to be ill-considered. So something that I noticed at the beginning was that the chief, I think is like the police commissioner or someone, the Jose, was like, wait, don't go in, wait. And it wasn't until he was stabbed did he order his team to go in. He wanted the murder to happen, right? And we learn later why, right? We learn later why. But all of a sudden, from there, I'm like, okay, he's one, like this. He's involved. Like there's something going on with him, because why would you wait until he's stabbed, even after there's been a report there that the knives come out? And I would say that from the point where I saw the boot land, I knew he wasn't dead. Right? Like that was, it was just something about that scene that kind of gave me the smoke that I saw behind the mirror, if that makes sense. Beautifully done. Obviously, like this movie is fabulous. I love it to bits, but that's when my brain started going to overdrive. I'm like, okay. And then obviously we get introduced to Amar, and we figure out who these guys are, and he's got his own crew, and they're tough and they're gritty and they're rugged and they're highly competent group of people. But as he's following the path of Vikram and how he singles him out, it's like, well, these two make sense, but why is this guy here? He doesn't make any sense at all. Well, like, he's the anomaly, so we're going to focus on him. Really clever. But from there, I'm like, okay, it's a taxi driver that normally takes him. Okay, he's got a relationship. And then I'm slowly building a profile of all the people he talks to must have some kind of relationship ongoing with Vikram that is beyond what we're currently seeing. And it sort of unravels in that way. And when we talk about the second half, we'll get into that a little bit. But the thing that I struggled with was there's plenty of simple scenes there where he's talking to the owner of the gym, and the gym, and he's I think he's I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. Upiliapan, something like that, right?
Character?
No, that's his name in the movie. Yeah, right.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Now this is where I get in trouble with these kind of movies, is because not only do I love the movie and I'm drawn to the story, I'm also very interested about the cultural aspects that I don't understand. So I paused the movie, and for about 15 minutes was looking up what does the forehead paint mean, and what like combination means what, you know what I mean, and what sect they're affiliated to and what part they are in their life and things like that. And that, I was fascinated by that. So I got wholly distracted by that shit, and that happened about 3 or 4 times in the movie, because I'm like, what does that mean? Like, that's cool. But some of the stuff really didn't make sense. And I think it's not that the movie didn't make sense, but his life didn't make sense. And that was really intriguing and really well written. And I think up until the point of that halfway point at the wedding, and and that you watch a typical Hollywood movie, you got first act, second act, third act. This was like first act, second act, third act, side A. And then you had first act, second act, third act, side B, right? So the side A component of the movie was like an old record or tape. You just turn it over and all of a sudden you got the other half. It's the same album, but it's a different side. You're listening, you're on side B, and you know that there's a clear turnover point. So the point where that reveal comes, up until that, the action was just intense, the violence graphic, and real. Like, there wasn't anything there that was like super out of. I mean, there was some kind of superhuman fight scenes there, and I'm very intrigued by that aspect too. I'll try and keep this short, but overall, I thought that was really, really great. What I love the most is that Black Squad was a highly trained, efficient, and wholly competent group of individuals, and they all had their part to play. And there was none of this Thor, Love and Thunder, stupid bullshit banter. Right? When someone said something funny, it was funny. Right? When it was serious, it was serious. It was deadly serious. And when the time came to fight, boy, did those guys fight, and they fought really well. Like, as if I would expect highly trained operatives to be able to fight. I loved dialogue between them. I loved the whole, especially when they captured one, the dialogue between him and Amar in the cell, where he's talking about having to look at his.
Oh yeah.
I mean that major just that's gut wrenching stuff, and it's that visceral realness to the script. Again, only going by the subtitles, but I can only imagine the true emphasis in the language that's being spoken. Like that's real shit. Like that's what people go through at that level of society where they're dealing with that level of underworld. Like that kind of stuff does happen. Yeah. You know what I mean? It may not happen as much as in the ivory tower of some cultures, but in other cultures, like that kind of stuff is just everyday for some people. When that came around in the second Inside B, and the reasons there, I was just like, that's really well written, and sure, there may have been some, like it might have been a bit intense in terms of how much they were trying to cram into that first half, but it all had a purpose. Like there was nothing there that was superfluous. Is that the right way of pronouncing it? There was every detail had an absolute purpose. Yeah. And that little kid, man, geez.
That was rough. Yeah.
Cutie ass, right?
Yeah.
I had to agree. Like, despite it being a long film, it didn't necessarily feel that way, or that there was any superfluous content in there. It was just one excellent scene to the next, and it never felt like it was dragging in any way. So, yeah, it's a significant feat to have a film that's almost 3 hours feel that continuously entertaining.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think Hollywood has a lot to learn from the quality of movies coming out at the moment. Like I said, I've only seen 2. And then the wrong one, but it was still good. But the quality was excellent. Like it's like I said, it's refreshing. It is really refreshing to see, and I feel like I've missed out on something for quite a long time.
Don't worry, man. There's nothing like missing out. You can rewatch all of them on this podcast. So. But basically, no, man. The thing is, what I took away as well from the first half is like, you're right, it didn't feel like it was dragging at all because it was just so engaging. Like, and that's because of the elements you guys are talking about. Like the script is written well enough that there's enough mystery for you to keep following along. Action is good, like that gym scene. Like he's basically like a drunken master in that scene. That's
yes.
Like, the thing is they do comedy quite well in this way because you're right, Dennis. It doesn't stop in. I won't reference the other movie, but it doesn't stop and it doesn't take away from the seriousness. But when it wants to be funny in the action, it can do it and then move on and get back to the real shit.
That's right.
So it was I think I really liked the first half. And you're right, the action, like the fight scenes actually was sort of a pretty good transition to the second half. Basically, the very end before they reveal Kamal Hassan, Vikram. Basically, there's a really cool fight scene in that wedding with the Black Ops guys, and they just, they're basically ninjas. Like they're just like running around. It's pretty good hand-to-hand combat afterward, like martial arts style. I was worried because like I always get worried about seeing martial art fighting because if it's not done well, it's just quick cuts and zoom-ins and close-ups. And you don't actually get to see them fighting, but this movie did awesome. Like I don't know what you guys saw, but it zoomed in at the right time. It pulled back. It had this cool like music video effect to it. It was like it was like rock and roll kind of thing. It like pulled you in, out, kick, punch, like awesome.
2 things that I really loved, not just in the first half, but just on that point. Soundtrack, amazing, like
so
really,
good.
really awesome, just so good. But the fight scenes there were really clear. They were visible. It wasn't bullshit choreography. These guys were actually doing what they were doing.
Yep.
There might have been some strings involved, but hey, it didn't feel like that. The thing that stood out for me is the scene where Santhanam, the main antagonist guy, the one with the family of 67, when he's being, I didn't quite understand. I must have missed something. He must have been captured and he was being taken to the police station for some reason.
Amazing
Right.
scene.
Yeah. So where he's like he chews on that drug and it flips him over and all of a sudden it's like boom, like blows the dude's head up and it's like and this isn't like some dude in the back of a SWAT van in the middle of New York City. No, he's in a little 3-wheeler, right? He's being hauled in. It's a dirt road, right? Like it's like it felt real, And then when he gets out, the way he gets out, like you can see he's like got freaking nutters.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I love the most is this dude hasn't been commissioned for the last 9 months to get into shape, right? He is there in all his dad bod glory, and is absolutely magnificent, right? To note that the scenes where the actors have their tops off and things like that, there's no one that's gone like, oh, I'm gonna get buff in this movie, and then spent like 8 or 9 months becoming a Spartan, right? They are just themselves, right? And they are just themselves, and that is a much more relatable as an audience and as a dad with a dad bod. I'm like, I can relate to that, right? I can't relate to killing someone, taking drugs, and stepping out of a smashed vehicle. But I could relate to looking like that sometimes in the morning when I wake up. You know what I mean? And I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Yeah.
I love that sequence, by the way. Like, that entrance for Sundenham is just almost iconic, I feel. The way he gets out of the car and he like back rolls out of the vehicle and it's like not particularly graceful or anything, but he just kind of lands awkwardly and then he like puts on his glasses and one of his goons comes up and like gives him a motorbike ride and he just looks completely like terrifying. I thought that was just like spectacularly done. And the actor that plays him, I think he doesn't have a whole lot of, lines to say or character development, but his just body language, I think he's got such a presence. He's like got his hands behind his back as he's walking very slowly and methodically. Yeah. He's this big brute kind of a guy and he's got that snarl on his face. That guy did a lot with very little, I thought, and was absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, he was awesome. I think liked him.
I'll go on, sorry, mate. Go jump in.
I'll say no. I really liked him as well. Like, he was spectacular. Like, as you said, Sonny, didn't have so much, but like it would just be scenes with him, like, something's happening and he just goes off on his phone and he's walking away. But you can tell, like, something's going to happen here and he's in control. Other scenes, like, I think it's like him against the cops in that wedding, before the wedding scene when they're eating biryani. That guy's deciding between like, should I go with the cops, go with him? And he didn't say anything, but he's just got so much authority and so much more power than the cops do. It's impressive. The characters are put together, and that makes sense to everybody. We'll talk about probably one of our favorite characters in the second half. The biggest surprise in the whole movie, I think, that shocked us. But everyone in general, man, even the Amar, the cop, as we mentioned in the first half, he played his role great. The bad guys were great. Everyone had their role in the place to play. No one felt like they were wasted actually, I'll take that back. There was one character which I thought was, completely wasted. But we'll talk about that one second half. But guys, let's jump across and talk about this second half. Because while the first half is murder mystery, the second half is balls to the wall action nonstop in all its glory. Like, I think the complexities of the first half disappear and they get replaced by, let's just kick some ass. Let's just get the guns out and let's explode and let's go crazy. But Dennis, I want to get your opinion, man. Like, so this style of action, like, I know you haven't seen so much satin in cinema and stuff like that. You've seen foreign movies though, definitely. But how did this sort of compare with like, other things you've seen just from an action point of view? Because me and Sunny have seen a little bit with RRR and a few things like that. But, for yourself, you haven't seen this level of violence and stuff like that. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it reminded me very much of The Watchmen. The first time I saw that. Yeah. I think if it's not been influenced a little bit by just the pacing and the aesthetic a little bit, I'd be very surprised. But this is, and where I think this is like a really great A-side, B-side, it's like, that quiet before the storm, and then when the shitstorm hits, it's on. And when it's on, and it's desperate, and it's violent, and it's brutish. And, I thought that whole second half there was an energy and an intenseness and an urgency to it all to get everything that was trying to be achieved now that they've been unmasked and everyone knows who they are, and they can't use the shadows to move anymore and achieve their goals. They've actually got to go out and be a little bit more overt. But I just love how they're like, you know what? We're not working covertly anymore. We're going overt. And we're not just going to go overt. We're going to go overly overt, and we're going to just smash everything in our path until we achieve our goals. The thing I didn't understand was the countdown for the watch. If anyone can explain that, then that would be great. Because it kind of like times up right at the point where it was like the climax of the movie. I was like, okay, is this all like orchestrated? Is this a plan? Another aspect of this was again that antagonist's character. I thought like the desperation in his behavior and everything, but he still, he may seem brutish and he may seem crude, but got very quickly that the place was bombed, right? Or hooked up to be bombed.
Yeah.
And managed to save, I would say, that nearly everyone with the exception of one dude.
66 out of the 67.
That's pretty good, right?
It's a pass.
Yeah. Managed to get them all out of the house, right? And there's a theme here of family, and there's a theme here of loss, and there's a theme here of having families destroyed by these scenarios that run through. Like there's no one in the movie untouched by that, and I think except for maybe some of the supporting characters, like all the primary players in the movie have been affected by family, and the only one up until a certain point was Amar, right? Like he is getting married and is trying to though I didn't quite understand the motivation behind getting married and things like that for him. But I think that was a bit of a plot device to set him up to fall, if you know what I mean. But I didn't mind it. Like if you're a Black Ops and you want to at least have some measure of normality in your life, you're going to try and form that, and you're going to need that person to be very understanding and patient. And he was so close to getting that, but then the way he lost that and the way he acted through that was just brilliant. I thought that was just so visceral and so real. Like I thought it was really great. But the whole family component of this movie was, I think that's the driving theme through all of that, is that family piece and the importance of family and the importance of looking after family and not putting them in situations that endangers them. Do you know what I mean? Thank you for letting me speak first, because I do get to call out, like, if I don't want to segue to the favorite scene bit, but am I allowed to? Do I have approval to segue to the favorite scene?
Go for it, man.
Is that right? So my favorite scene from that second bit, and I do believe that you guys concur, is Agent Tina. Right.
Oh yeah.
So good.
That scene shadows everything else, right?
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a really great movie, but that scene is just phenomenal in the way that it was choreographed. As a dad, you kind of run scenarios through your head. What happens if someone comes through the door with the intent to hurt your family, right? And it's the level of desperation you would fight to save them. watching that was like watching the same kind of images I see in my head if I ever had to defend my family from, antagonists coming through the door. It's, of course, I'm probably not as proficient as her, but she fought with the heart of a lion. She looked like an old maid, but was like, and she got cut and she got hurt and she got like kicked through doors and glass and all kinds of stuff. But it is exactly how I would imagine someone who would fight if they were protecting a child, right? They would not, if, not everyone's going to get up and fight like that, of course, right? But she's very well trained. She used her environment to her advantage. She knew the things around her that she could use and grab. She didn't even look. She grabbed that pot off the hang and used it as a mace and smacked that dude across the head. Like my heart is like, I wanted to talk about this kind of this scene, but it's actually hard for me to talk about in reality because it's just so damn good. Do you know what I mean? And I'd say there's only one, perhaps two other scenes in cinema that will stay with me as strongly as that. And the other one is from Old Boy, where the scene where he comes up and he does that single shot scene where he fights all those dudes
through the corridor,
right?
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, amazing scene. And I never thought that scene would be paralleled, but I saw it last night. That scene where the scenes where she's fighting, I will never forget. To me, those two will be on the same shelf forever. And I can't talk about it enough. Like, you just have to see it.
And what you were saying about her just using her environment and the realism of it, just give her 2 forks and she can do a lot of damage. And it obviously goes to how proficient she is and how intelligent she is in terms of spatial awareness.
Yes.
But I do just love the realism of these fight sequences where it's hand to hand, it's bloody, it's gritty. There's that amazing scene when she has stabbed some guy to death with 2 forks that she does her hair up in a bun and then continues fighting on as well, which is just amazing. But
absolutely. And I wonder if that was actually scripted. Like, I think she's probably just got up, walked towards the camera, and she's tied her hair up, and they've just like kept it in. You know what I mean? Look, I honestly don't know the name of that actress or what she's been in before, but I would say that if she doesn't win some kind of award or recognition for her part in that movie, I would be very, very surprised, and perhaps a little bit disappointed too, because I think she really, honestly deserves it. That was just, but that was the trigger. Once I realized that she was an agent, then all the pieces fell into my brain. Like, if she's an agent, okay, then the other dude's an agent, and maybe the taxi driver's an agent, and you know what I mean? Yeah.
And I also love the fact that Tina being like a secret agent was foreshadowed in like the first half, right? When she catches something really quickly that Amar was holding, and I was like, oh, that's a bit odd. I wonder what's the deal. But then you figure out the baby has some heart issues, so maybe she's just very good at stopping noises from happening. But then there's actually a reason to it. And what an awesome payoff to that one scene.
Jedi reflexes.
Definitely, like, that's probably one part that I loved about it. Like, it was just like such a surprise because like they had shown it before, like her catching the cup, as you said, and I was like, okay, right, she's just been in this environment for a long time, so she's just very, she's very cautious to not let anything fall or any loud sounds happen. Like, I didn't put together the fact that she is an agent, but I think it goes from one point where she's just innocently trying to, tell Vikram's. I don't know. It's Vikram's son's wife's. Tell her to basically call call this number.
Oh,
why would I call this number for? And then she's like, no, just call, and then she just takes it, and you just see her face just change, just like that, and she's like, sir, it's me. They're here. Come quick. And it's just from then you're like, whoa, what is happening now? It's
and then proceeds to use that same phone to crush the first dude's throat. Right? It's like, everything's a weapon. Boom, The
thing I loved about it is, it's great because like, unlike a lot of the other scenes which are superheroes, basically, like Kamal Hassan can do anything. But this one was really, like, it was real. Like, she was thrown through tables, she was thrown through glass, she was taking a beating, At the end, I was actually quite sad when she, had to pass away, because I was like, this was a great character. Like, that was such an impactful scene that it made me invest in this character so much in such a short time. But it was just real. And that's what this movie does really well, I think. Like, even though, it has superhero elements to it at times, there's certain parts where it's just like the other scene you mentioned before as well in the second half, when he's the main antagonist is walking through the house and it's been bombed, and he's so carefully just like, don't touch anything, don't touch anything, don't touch anything, because anything can blow up. And it's just that tension you see. But then you're right, Dennis, about that scene when he's like, everyone has left but there's one person, and then everyone in the house is like, let's just get out, let's get out. He's like, no, we can't go. He's still looking around and trying to find that person, screaming for him, until eventually, the tension was so great. It's just like build up. Yeah, this movie, the action, I got to say, most of the action I think was pretty phenomenal. It was great.
No, I agree. Really I would say that, and I'll just reiterate. I think Hollywood can like, they could learn a lot from just that one movie in terms of how to pace a complicated story, how to handle, multiple character sets, multiple character arcs, multiple character types, how to inject good, strong female leads and characters into the movie, and do it well without making a big thing of it. And again, I don't want to get into the politics of it all, but finding that nice balance and just doing it exceptionally well. I think in the short time that I saw her on screen and the short time that that whole scenario played out, like, not once, I would say, in Marvel movies have I got to that level of intensity. The only one that I would say that even comes close is probably the fight scene between Winter Soldier and Cap in that first instance, right? But we're talking like a capful compared to having like 44-gallon drums just poured on my head of intensity. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even come close to how awesome that scene is. Like, my words don't say it. That doesn't even come close to it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and look at,
can I jump in with one? With one other action scene, the one where at the climax of the first half, where Vikram is fighting the Sundanam's people and the police guards as well.
Yes,
and it feels like it's just one long shot of people fighting him and him fending them off very easily. It's not the jump cuts that take you out of the kind of fight scene or don't give you contextualization. It is just people running at him and he is beating them off one by one, and it feels like just one long shot. And I absolutely love that, because you can follow the action, you follow the punches landing, and you remain within the movie. And that is something Hollywood could learn from, because I feel like jump cuts are all the rage at the moment, and they just really do need to do those long fight sequences, because they just, when they're done well, they are amazing.
Wasn't it Taken 2 that holds the current record for the most cuts in a single scene of Liam Neeson jumping over a fence? I can't give you the number, but it's ridiculously high, right? I saw it on YouTube on rando time, but no, Sonny, you're absolutely right. I would say that the scene with Tina is fantastic, and it does kind of overshadow a lot of the things in my mind. But those other fight scenes between, the Black Ops at the wedding, where they just totally destroy everyone. It only takes the BBG with his kill to wipe them out, and he does easily, but they survive. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not dead.
Yeah,
they're just cleaned up. And then that fight scene with Vikram, and where he's surrounded and he's taking them all on and he's holding his own, doing well. But I think that the cool factor was that that prison scene when it comes in, and I've got, what is it? I've got the dialogue here. I actually paused and wrote it out as I was watching it, because I thought the level of coolness. What channel did I put it in? That's give me 2 seconds.
I love that as soon as the music plays, his guy in the cell kind of knows immediately what's about to go down as well.
Yeah.
He's just like, puts his hand over his head. He's like, it's going to get
It's going
real.
down. Yeah. No, there's a lot of really cool things they've done in terms of the action and the acting. It's really impressive. I just love how it's all gritty. Even the Tina scene to the house scene to the prison scene, it's all like just real. It feels like it's down and dirty, and I like that feel of that movie. Haven't seen it in a while like that. Even the color palette and everything like that. It's all toned down. It's really impressive. Did you find that quote? Did you find that quote, Dennis?
I did. It's like, once upon a time, there lived the ghost. He was known to be a killer and feared the most. Now, I'm not doing it any justice, because you got to think of the voice and the way that it's delivered and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's used maybe twice or maybe 3 times in the movie.
Yeah.
But it was like, wow, that's really cool, But also too, something with the soundtrack. There's a big sort of thing at the moment where songs, like popular songs, 80s songs, rock ballads, all that kind of stuff, are brought into the movies and all that. The benefit, I guess, of watching something in another language is when the subtitles kick in, they read you out the lyrics of the song. And not all the music was English. Some of it was, absolutely, but not all of it was.
Yeah.
And some of the lyrics to that music was really poignant, and on point to the situation. I thought this is really actually quite poetic and beautiful in the way that they've used this song in particular at this moment to describe what's happening with this character. And I really enjoyed that. I really did enjoy that.
It's used quite a bit in Indian cinema, because old Indian music is actually really, really beautiful. It's really melodious. The stuff you heard, it's quite like that. So they do that mix matching of old and new. But there is a benefit of, if you don't, even because I don't know the songs or references even myself, but they just sound cool when they're mixed into that world. When it's done right, when it's done sort of wrong, then it can sort of be like, it's kind of a cheap gimmick. But in this case, it was used beautifully. And just, you're right. The point you said before, Sonny, how he just knows that that's a song and it just clicks. It's like, okay. It's like us, it's not just him, it's us as well. We're like, okay, we know what's going to happen now. Yeah. But man, I think we're all pretty big fans of this movie, man. But I did have some critiques about this movie. There were some things which I wouldn't say that they took me out of this movie so much, but I just questioned it. And I think you mentioned a point before, Dennis, about there being devices. Sorry, Amar, man. Seriously, bro, if you're that committed to your job, you're going to forget your damn wedding. And I thought that was, it was as unrealistic as a lot of this movie was sometimes. That to me was a bit all right, this is getting a bit silly here. That was mainly one of them. I think that character really had no development and nothing. And that's okay. They had a lot of other characters in the movie, including a strong female character, who's arguably our favorite, to be honest, out of anyone. That was one. Some of the CGI towards the end, especially, bit underwhelming, I thought, compared to some of the other stuff we've seen. I think in other movies that sort of, even with international film and stuff like that, it was good for most of the time. There's some points like that. We talked about this in 3 times now. The camera zooming in and zooming out in the dark light. They're using CGI to do somewhat of that, the camera angles. But I think the explosive firework just didn't do it for me. It took me out a little bit.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Did you have any sort of critiques about the movie?
Well,
I think love the action in this film, just about all of the sequences. I thought that the last action scene, the big climax, was probably the least of all of them. And look, it's always hard to pull off the final battle because there's going to be a crap ton of people. You're going to have bigger weapons. There's going to be more things going on in the screen. So it's hard to pull it off in a way that kind of makes sense or doesn't seem too gimmicky. But here it was just, him, Vikram firing guns at people. There was things just blowing up everywhere. I just felt it lacked some of the creativity of the earlier fight sequences, which were just done really well and, were really engaging to watch. This is just more like a shootout, bullets flying everywhere, things blowing up. It was probably not as kind of good didn't live up to all the other action sequences, I felt. It had the additional element, I guess, of the little baby needing to be saved. So that was at least something we could grapple with that was, a bit non-generic. But I just thought that final action sequence probably wasn't as good. And then, the special effects probably were a bit of a letdown, like when Vikram is firing the gun at everyone and going absolutely crazy and his title card comes up as commander of the Black Ops. Like it becomes a little obvious that the CGI is there. But look, it's really hard to do fight sequences. When it's Marvel, it's just a mess of CGI. So I get it. It's really tough, but it's probably the one thing that I've kind of picked up on. Can I also just say it was really painful watching that little child get CPR. I was just like, this needs to end, because there was about 3 minutes of him just pressing on the little kid's chest and doing CPR. And I was like, this is brutal to watch. Like, I know the kid's going to survive, but can we not do this, please? But anyway, just the action sequence in the last scenes for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, but it, again, we started the movie with a dance. We ended the movie with a bang. Do you know what I mean? And the dance kind of had already set my mind up to be flexible enough to just, it could flip at any moment in terms of look, I wasn't too critical of the CGI because understanding budgets, right? Like, but in the same vein, they put a lot of scenes in that movie. There was a lot of sets. There was a lot of things going on that they could have pulled back on and put a bit of extra budget into that end scene and thought about it a little bit better. I've seen things before in this movie, like the scene where she catches the cup. Blind Fury with Ruka Hauer. There's a scene where he's at the desk and the bad guy, the test whether he's actually blind or not, pushes a cup off the table and he catches it, right? Like, so I've seen that before. The scene where he's in the corridor and all his guns are hidden. Do you know what I mean? There's a Japanese samurai movie where that kind of thing happens as well. Do you know what I mean? And there's a few things like that I've seen before. I reckon he's like, and the title cards coming in. I mean, that just feels like Suicide Squad and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Or even anime where that shit happens. There's an anime called Yokai Watch, and every time he gets a new yokai, the yokai comes up and it's got a title screen and some stats. Do you know what I mean? You're like, so you're learning about the yokai as you're growing, and it's just, I think it's just little things that he's loved and is kind of stuck in his creative mindset, and he's just wanted to just inject them in somewhere. And I know what that feels like being a designer. Like, you just, I've seen that over here. I'm going to try and get that in there. It may not actually get into development, but we'll give it a go, right? Like, we'll have a crack at it. And that's what I think some of these things are. The thing I struggled with probably the most was the dubbing. For the most part, I thought the voices were really clear, really strong, really powerful voices, and I loved them. I thought they were really good. But there were some scenes, especially one scene where the dubbing was way off. And not only that, they were actually talking and yelling at each other with no sound, but you could hear him actually walk off. So they still had the sound effects. But he said something, but there was no, he was mouthing it, but there was no sound coming off, but you could hear the surrounding sound effects. It's just a slight error in editing in one particular scene. But for me, I couldn't. Sometimes there was one section of the movie where the dubbing itself was not quite right. For the most part, it was great, but it was just this almost this one slot where it wasn't quite okay. And I just I struggled with that a little bit, but it didn't put me off. I was already so forgiving of these kind of things at this point in the movie that I didn't care one iota. If I had seen something like that in like a Marvel movie or any other sort of big Disney movie, I was like, man, you guys are fucked up, right? Like, but in this kind of movie, I'm like, I don't care. This movie is so awesome. I will accept its faults, warts and all. And that's something. I think there's something in that Hollywood's forgotten that its audience can be forgiving of movies that are imperfect because they are just creative pieces, and they can't always be spot on. And the audience will be okay with that if, for the most part, you take them on the ride. They're so scared of getting everything on point that they will cripple and sometimes constrain creativity to make sure it falls into that layer of perfection. Whereas something like this, it falls to the wall. Like, it's great. And for all of its failures, even its dodgy CGI, flame CGI, like, I don't care. Just give me more.
No, you make a good point.
Oh, you're going, Ami.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, those imperfections, because I think with all the movies we watched in the Hollywood sort of trio now that we've seen, essentially, like, the experience and the ride that they take us on, pretty crazy. Like, I'm not used to watching 3-hour movies, but, it doesn't feel like that at times. Like, you're right, even from, like, you start off with the dance scene, you're like, whoa, it's a crazy dance scene. Like, the studio's doing something pretty wild out there, but it's not too long. It doesn't drag. The song is catchy. It's good enough to be like, all right, that's a great start. Then it just keeps going and going and going. So you really, like, even the criticism we're talking about, like, did I walk away from this movie going like, oh, like, I hated that scene or I hated that part? No, these are things I'm thinking of way after the fact. So watching it, no, I didn't have any issues with it. What were you going to say, Sonny?
When Dennis was saying, give me more, can we just talk about this looks like it's going to have a sequel, and that Rolex guy at the very end did another epic entrance for that in this movie.
Yeah.
Chops off some dude's head, blood spattered on his white shirt, his face, his teeth, lays down the gauntlet, and you just know that this dude is a whole other level of psychopath, and you're going to have a battle of wills because Vikram is obviously a man who's, fully invested in this cause as well. And it's going to be an epic deal, these two. And they, both walk away putting their sunglasses on kind of at the same time. And you're just like, this is going to be an epic sequel.
Yeah.
No, I'm really looking I'm looking forward to the sequel. Definitely.
I was going to say, I reckon we're going to get a John Wick number 4, and it's going to be called John Vikram. There's a lot that they're going to take from this movie, and I reckon both fed each other in many regards. But
that's a good comparison, actually. I didn't even, because even with that style of shooting, it even looked a bit like John Wick, right? It's very dark and everything like that. But I do want to mention, this did remind me a little bit of, because I think you mentioned a lot of good places, especially you, Dennis, with the anime and stuff like that. I got a lot of Guy Ritchie feels at the start of this movie. About you guys? Like the whole gangster flick, like the gym scene with the music and stuff like that, and like the comedy gangster blowing people's heads off and stuff like that, but putting the soundtrack over it. Very sort of Guy Ritchie, Snatch, or The Gentleman.
Even the title cards, I feel like that's similar to Guy Ritchie's stuff, right? He's done in the past, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I feel
like those vibes.
Yeah, like we've kind of seen, like it's a mix of things that we're familiar with, but done in like a really awesome kind of take. And I think that's, I think that it's good homage. Like he's obviously he's a fan of the art, and fan of cinema, and has brought in those elements that he's really loved and done his best to try and create something that's unique and exciting and interesting, but also pay homage to the things that he's really enjoyed too. Hats off. I think excellent job.
Yeah, and without it being cliche, right? I never felt anything was cliche or overused or a trope. Like, I never had any of those vibes going on. But yeah, so we're going to introduce something new here. We haven't done this before, so if you're listening, welcome. It's the first time. We're going to give a rating for this movie. So I don't know who should I pass it to first. I reckon, Sonny, you go first. What do you give it? Just a simple 1 out of 5, man.
1 out of 5. I'm going to give this a 4.5. I reckon.
Ooh.
Highly recommend watching this movie. It is such an experience.
Yeah.
You are in for an unexpected ride, and you're never going to get out of this world in that full 3 hours that you're watching it. Great performances, great action sequences, just really brilliantly executed film. Can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, nice. Dennis, how about you?
I'm going to have to go the same. Like, the only thing that's holding it back are those quality flaws, but otherwise, I'm going to give it a 4.5 as well. I reckon it's something that everyone should sit down and watch and enjoy. And I think it's a true shame that a lot of people will overlook this because it's not on Disney Plus or it's not on Amazon Prime or that kind of stuff. But I think I'll be definitely talking to my circles around this movie, because I think they enjoy the same things I enjoy, so I reckon they're going to love it.
Yeah, sweep it, guys. I'm on the same boat. This is in between 4 to 5. Like, even though they had those small little flaws, but it's done one thing that I'm actually really looking forward to this next iteration, because I want to see this guy again. And as you said, Sonny, with this new crazy roller guy who they kept mentioning in secret.
Yeah,
it did a good job of building like anticipation without it being like so much that it's taking over the movie. Yeah, I can't recommend this. And this is awesome. Like, this is a great feat. It's something that everybody should watch. If you're an action lover, then yeah, this is definitely something you got to get out there and see, because it's doing things creatively, which we haven't actually seen that much of. So, yeah, basically, I think that big fans of this movie. Really looking forward to seeing more stuff like this. Any final thoughts before we close this one off?
I have one, but I'll be quick.
Yeah.
The other day we were talking about Thor: Love and Thunder, and I explained that the first thing that I would do with that movie would be to set up the main antagonist as a lurking threat not to be revealed until the end. And this movie did exactly that. The reason why the main antagonist, the big bad guy, saved his 66 members of his family was because he knew if he failed, they'd all die. For him, the stakes were very high, very, very high. And I think he mentions that too, Yeah. And it could be just a little bit of lost in translation, subtitles, like not really picking up on it as much as what it would be if I was able to understand a native tongue. But I think they did a really good job of layering in that there's a higher threat to all this that they haven't even seen yet, and that the antagonist that we had to that the protagonist had to sort of deal with was only a lower boss. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't the BBG; it was just a lower level boss, not even a lower level boss. There was like 1 or 2 layers between him and the BBG. Do you know what I mean? And if he's a mad, really, then imagine what they're up against. Do you know what I mean? But we got a real taste of that at the end, and I think they did a great intro to Rolex. Like, I think that was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, a couple hundred
delivered
people
on the expectation that you had built up, right, in a short amount of time. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the director, for whatever his flaws, absolutely knows how to take a character from 0 to 100 in 15 minutes. And I think whatever he does in future, he should remember that he can do that very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Now looking forward to this universe, new multiverse for us to look into. But yeah.
Yep.
That'll be it for us. This was so much fun, guys. Really loved it. Loved the movie.
Pleasure.
Loved the episode. And we'll
enjoy the movie
you in the next one.
All right.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, well, bye.
Cheers.
Not all.